Eleanor Sterling lived a life most people only dreamed of. Her days were filled with fancy brunches, designer clothes, and a social calendar that never seemed to end. She lived in a huge house with a perfectly manicured lawn, right in the heart of the poshest part of town. But more than her money, Eleanor valued her friendships, especially the one she shared with Beatrice. Beatrice and Eleanor had been best friends since they were little girls. They'd gone to the same schools, shared secrets, and always been there for each other. Beatrice, while not as wealthy as Eleanor, was just as stylish and charming. Everyone loved being around her. They were like sisters, or so Eleanor thought. Eleanor's brunches were legendary. Every Sunday, her house would be filled with laughter, delicious food, and the sparkling chatter of her social circle. People came from all over just to be seen at an Eleanor Sterling brunch. And Eleanor loved hosting, showing off her beautiful home and her even more beautiful jewelry. Among her collection, Eleanor's favorite piece was a stunning diamond necklace. It was a gift from her late grandmother, and she wore it almost every day. The necklace wasn't just expensive, it held a special place in her heart. It reminded her of happy times and the love of her family. Behind the scenes, keeping Eleanor's life running smoothly, was Maria, her housekeeper. Maria was a kind, hard-working woman who had been with the Sterling family for years. She was reliable and trustworthy, and Eleanor had always considered her a part of the household. Maria took pride in her work and always went the extra mile to make sure everything was perfect. However, whispers had started circulating amongst Eleanor's friends. Stories about missing items, blamed on housekeepers, had become a common topic of conversation at their brunches. Eleanor never believed those stories, until one day, something happened that made her question everything she thought she knew. That day, her beloved diamond necklace vanished. The morning after the brunch, Eleanor went to her jewelry box, humming a cheerful tune. She was getting ready for a charity luncheon and wanted to wear her favorite necklace. But when she opened the box, her heart skipped a beat. The velvet lining was empty. The diamond necklace was gone. A wave of panic washed over her. She frantically searched the jewelry box, moving earrings and bracelets aside, hoping it was just misplaced. But it wasn't there. She checked her dresser, her closet, even under her bed. Nothing. The necklace had vanished without a trace. Eleanor's mind raced. Where could it be? Had she left it at the brunch? That seemed unlikely, she always took extra care with it. Had it fallen off somewhere? She retraced her steps from the day before, picturing herself greeting guests, serving food, and laughing with Beatrice. But she couldn't remember taking the necklace off. Then, the whispers she'd heard at previous brunches crept into her thoughts. Stories of missing silverware, misplaced wallets, and accusations leveled against unsuspecting housekeepers. A chill ran down her spine. Could it be? Could Maria have taken it? The thought made her stomach churn. She trusted Maria. Maria was like family. But the necklace was gone, and Maria was the only other person who had been in the house that day. Doubt, like a creeping vine, began to wrap itself around Eleanor's heart. She tried to dismiss the thought. Maybe she was overreacting. Maybe it would turn up. But the more she thought about it, the more suspicious she became. She remembered Maria's quiet demeanor, her watchful eyes. Had she been too trusting? Had she been blind to something sinister? Eleanor knew she had to confront Maria. She couldn't just let it go. The necklace was too important, both monetarily and sentimentally. And if Maria was innocent, then she would apologize. But if Maria was guilty, Eleanor had to know the truth. The uncertainty was eating her alive. With a deep breath, Eleanor decided to call Maria into her study. The confrontation was about to begin. Maria entered Eleanor's study with a warm smile, ready to start her day. "You wanted to see me, Mrs. Sterling?" she asked, her voice gentle and respectful. Eleanor, who was sitting behind her large mahogany desk, felt a pang of guilt. Maria looked so innocent, so unsuspecting. But she steeled herself, reminding herself of the missing necklace. Yes, Maria. Please, sit down. Maria sat in the chair opposite Eleanor, her brow furrowing slightly. She sensed something was wrong. Is everything all right, Mrs. Sterling? Eleanor hesitated, then took a deep breath. Maria, I'm missing something. Something very valuable to me. Maria's eyes widened. Missing? What is it, Mrs. Sterling? Maybe I can help you find it. It's my diamond necklace, Maria, Eleanor said, her voice trembling slightly. It was in my jewelry box yesterday, and now it's gone. Maria gasped. Oh, Mrs. Sterling, I'm so sorry to hear that. Have you looked everywhere? Sometimes things just get misplaced. I've looked everywhere, Maria, Eleanor said, her voice hardening. It's not misplaced. It's gone. She paused, then continued, her voice laced with suspicion. And you were the only one in the house yesterday, besides my guests. Maria's face paled. Are you accusing me, Mrs. Sterling? Her voice was barely a whisper. I don't want to accuse anyone, Maria, Eleanor said, though her tone suggested otherwise. But the necklace is gone, and I need to know where it is. Tears welled up in Maria's eyes. Mrs. Sterling, I would never steal from you. I have worked for you for so long. You know I would never do something like that. Then where is it, Maria? Eleanor demanded, her voice rising. If you didn't take it, then who did? I don't know, Mrs. Sterling. Maria cried, tears streaming down her face. I swear, I didn't take your necklace. Please, you have to believe me. Eleanor stood up, her eyes blazing. I don't know what to believe anymore, Maria. All I know is that my necklace is gone, and you're the prime suspect. She pointed a finger at Maria. If you don't tell me where it is, I'm going to call the police. And I'm going to tell everyone I know that you're a thief. Maria gasped, her body shaking with sobs. Please, Mrs. Sterling, don't do that. You'll ruin my life. I didn't do anything wrong. But Eleanor was unmoved. The thought of her precious necklace, gone, fueled her anger and suspicion. Tell me where it is, Maria, she repeated, her voice cold and unforgiving. Or face the consequences. The friendship, or at least the semblance of one, had vanished. All that was left was a stark power dynamic, fueled by suspicion and fear. Eleanor watched Maria leave, her heart a mixture of anger and doubt. Had she gone too far? Was she making a terrible mistake? But the necklace was still missing, and she felt she had no other choice. Later that day, Beatrice arrived, her face etched with concern. Eleanor, darling, I heard what happened. Are you all right? Eleanor poured out her story, recounting the missing necklace, her suspicions about Maria, and the heated confrontation. Tears streamed down her face as she described Maria's distress and her own conflicting emotions. Beatrice listened patiently, offering words of comfort and support. Oh, Eleanor, how awful. I can't believe this is happening to you. She hugged Eleanor tightly. You did the right thing. You have to protect yourself and your belongings. But what if I'm wrong, Beatrice? Eleanor sobbed. What if Maria didn't take it? I'll ruin her life. Beatrice squeezed her hand. Even if you're wrong, you need to find out the truth. And the best way to do that is to gather evidence. She paused, then added thoughtfully, have you considered installing security cameras? Eleanor looked at her, surprised. Security cameras? In my own home? It's the only way to be sure, Eleanor, Beatrice insisted. You can install hidden cameras in the main rooms, and then you can see exactly what's going on when you're not there. It's the only way to catch the real thief, if it wasn't Maria. Beatrice subtly emphasized, if it wasn't Maria, further planting seeds of doubt. Eleanor hesitated. The idea felt invasive, even wrong. But the thought of the missing necklace, and the possibility that someone she trusted had betrayed her, outweighed her reservations. "I don't know, Beatrice." "Think about it, Eleanor," Beatrice urged. "It's the only way to clear Maria's name, if she's innocent. And if she's guilty, you'll have proof. It's a win-win situation." Beatrice smiled reassuringly. "I can even help you find a good security system. I know a few people who specialize in that sort of thing." Eleanor, vulnerable and desperate for answers, found herself swayed by Beatrice's logic. The idea of having concrete proof, one way or the other, was too tempting to resist. "All right, Beatrice," she said finally. "Let's do it. Let's install the cameras." Unbeknownst to Eleanor, she was walking right into a carefully laid trap. The next few days were a blur of activity. Beatrice, true to her word, arranged for a security company to come and install the hidden cameras. The technicians, discreet and efficient, worked quickly, placing tiny cameras in strategic locations throughout the house, in the living room disguised as a smoke detector, in the dining room hidden inside a decorative vase, and even in Eleanor's study, cleverly concealed within a bookshelf. Eleanor felt a growing sense of unease as she watched the cameras being installed. The house, once a sanctuary, now felt like a surveillance zone. She couldn't shake the feeling that she was betraying Maria, even though Beatrice kept reassuring her that it was for the best. Maria, oblivious to the hidden cameras, continued her work as usual. But Eleanor noticed a change in her demeanor. Maria seemed more withdrawn, more subdued. She avoided eye contact and spoke in hushed tones. Eleanor wondered if Maria sensed the distrust in the air. The atmosphere in the house became increasingly tense. Eleanor found herself constantly watching Maria, scrutinizing her every move. She replayed the confrontation in her mind, questioning her own judgment. Was she being fair? Was she letting her paranoia cloud her perception? Beatrice, on the other hand, seemed to thrive in the heightened atmosphere. She visited Eleanor every day, offering advice and encouragement. She constantly reminded Eleanor of the importance of catching the thief, subtly fueling her suspicions. One afternoon, Eleanor found Maria dusting the living room, her face pale and drawn. Eleanor couldn't bear the guilt any longer. She walked over to Maria and placed a hand on her arm. "Maria," she said softly, "I want you to know that I'm sorry for what I said. I was angry and scared, and I didn't mean to accuse you." Maria looked up, her eyes filled with sadness. "It's all right, Mrs. Sterling," she said quietly. "I understand. But it hurts to be suspected of something I didn't do." Eleanor's heart ached. "I know, Maria. And I promise, I'll do everything I can to find out who really took the necklace. I hope you can forgive me." Maria managed a weak smile. "I forgive you, Mrs. Sterling. I just hope you find your necklace." But even as she spoke those words, a sense of foreboding hung in the air. The hidden cameras were recording, and the truth, whatever it might be, was about to be revealed. The seeds of doubt and suspicion had been sown, and the harvest was fast approaching. Another Sunday arrived, bringing with it the familiar bustle of Eleanor's brunch. The guests arrived, dressed in their finest clothes, ready to enjoy the food, the company, and the social spectacle. Eleanor, despite the lingering tension, tried to put on a cheerful face. Beatrice was, as always, by her side, offering support and witty conversation. But this time, there was an underlying current of anticipation. Both women knew that the security cameras were recording, and they were both eager to see what the footage would reveal. Maria, however, seemed more subdued than usual. She moved about the house with quiet efficiency, serving food and drinks with a polite but distant demeanor. Eleanor couldn't help but notice that Maria avoided being alone in any room for too long, almost as if she sensed the hidden eyes watching her. As the brunch drew to a close, the guests began to depart, their laughter and chatter gradually fading away. Eleanor felt a sense of relief wash over her. The day was almost over, and soon she would know the truth. Once the last guest had left, Eleanor and Beatrice retreated to Eleanor's study, where the security system's monitor was set up. Beatrice busied herself making tea, while Eleanor nervously fiddled with the remote control. "Are you ready, darling?" Beatrice asked, her voice laced with excitement. Eleanor took a deep breath. "As I'll ever be." She pressed the play button, and the security footage flickered to life on the screen. They watched in silence as the footage showed the events of the day, the guests arriving, the conversations, the laughter, Maria serving food and cleaning up. Everything seemed normal, ordinary. But then, as the footage neared the end of the brunch, something caught their eye. The camera in the dining room showed Beatrice lingering after everyone else had left. She glanced around to make sure she was alone, then reached into her purse and pulled out something small and sparkling. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The truth, after all the suspicion and doubt, was about to be revealed, and it was far more shocking than she could have ever imagined. The hunt for the thief was over, but a far greater betrayal was just beginning. Eleanor stared at the screen, her mind reeling. It couldn't be. Beatrice? Her best friend? The woman who had always been there for her. It was impossible. But the footage didn't lie. There it was, clear as day, Beatrice, glancing around to make sure she was alone, reaching into her purse, and then, slipping Eleanor's diamond necklace inside. Tears welled up in Eleanor's eyes, blurring her vision. She felt a wave of nausea wash over her. How could Beatrice do this to her? How could she betray their friendship in such a cruel and calculating way? Beatrice, sitting beside her, feigned shock. "Oh, my God, Eleanor," she exclaimed, her voice trembling. "I can't believe it. What is she doing?" Eleanor turned to her, her eyes filled with disbelief and anger. "Don't play dumb, Beatrice," she said, her voice shaking. "I saw it. You took my necklace." Beatrice's face crumpled. "Eleanor, I can explain." "Explain what?" Eleanor demanded, her voice rising. "Explain why you stole my necklace. Explain why you let me accuse Maria. Explain why you pretended to be my friend." Beatrice started to cry. "It's not what it looks like, Eleanor. I was going to return it. I just wanted to borrow it for a special occasion." "Borrow it?" Eleanor scoffed. "Without asking me? And why were you sneaking around like that? Why didn't you just tell me you wanted to wear it?" Beatrice stammered, searching for an explanation. I was afraid you'd say no. You're always so possessive of that necklace." "Possessive?" Eleanor cried. "It's a family heirloom, Beatrice. It means the world to me. And you just took it, without even thinking about how I would feel." The truth crashed down on Eleanor like a tidal wave. Beatrice wasn't her friend. She was envious, manipulative, and dishonest. The years of friendship, the shared secrets, the laughter and tears, it had all been a lie. The pain of the betrayal was almost unbearable. The world that Eleanor thought she knew had shattered around her, leaving her feeling lost, confused, and utterly heartbroken. The trust she had placed in Beatrice had been shattered into a million pieces, leaving a gaping hole in her heart. "Why, Beatrice?" Eleanor asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Why would you do this to me?" Beatrice's tears flowed freely now. I don't know," she sobbed. "I guess I was jealous. You have everything, Eleanor. The beautiful house, the expensive clothes, the perfect life. And I always felt like I was living in your shadow." "That's ridiculous, Beatrice," Eleanor exclaimed. "I always tried to include you in everything. I thought we were equals." "But we weren't, Eleanor," Beatrice said, her voice filled with resentment. "You always had the upper hand. You were always the one everyone admired. I just wanted to feel like I had something you wanted, something you couldn't have. Eleanor stared at her, stunned. So you stole my necklace to make yourself feel better? To even the score? Beatrice nodded, shamefaced. I know it was wrong, Eleanor. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to hurt you. I just wasn't thinking. Not thinking. Eleanor repeated, her voice laced with sarcasm. You meticulously planned this, Beatrice. You encouraged me to install the cameras, knowing that you were going to steal the necklace. You let me accuse Maria, knowing that she was innocent. How could you be so cruel? Beatrice didn't answer. She just sat there, sobbing, her face buried in her hands. Eleanor stood up, her body trembling with anger. Get out, Beatrice, she said, her voice cold and hard. Get out of my house, and get out of my life. I never want to see you again. Beatrice looked up, her eyes filled with fear. Eleanor, please don't do this. We've been friends for so long. Not anymore, Beatrice, Eleanor said, her voice unwavering. Our friendship is over. You betrayed me in the worst possible way, and I can never forgive you for that. Beatrice slowly stood up, her head hanging low. She walked towards the door, her footsteps heavy with shame. As she reached the doorway, she turned back to Eleanor, her eyes filled with regret. I'm so sorry, Eleanor, she whispered. I really am. Eleanor didn't respond. She just watched as Beatrice walked out of the study, out of the house, and out of her life forever. The door clicked shut, sealing the end of a friendship that had once seemed unbreakable. The silence that followed was deafening, filled only with the echoes of betrayal and heartbreak. The necklace, once a symbol of love and family, had become a symbol of deceit and loss. After Beatrice left, Eleanor sank into her chair, feeling numb. The betrayal had been so deep, so unexpected, that she didn't know what to do. She looked around the study, a room filled with happy memories, now tainted by deceit. She thought of Maria, the innocent woman she had wrongly accused. She had to make things right. The next morning, Eleanor called Maria and asked her to come to the house. When Maria arrived, Eleanor greeted her with tears in her eyes. Maria, she said, her voice trembling, I owe you a huge apology. I was wrong to accuse you. Terribly wrong. Maria looked at her, her expression a mixture of sadness and relief. I knew you would realize the truth eventually, Mrs. Sterling. Eleanor explained everything, the security cameras, the footage, Beatrice's confession. Maria listened patiently, her eyes widening with shock as Eleanor recounted the events. I can't believe it, Mrs. Sterling, Maria said, shaking her head. Beatrice? She always seemed so nice. She's not who I thought she was, Maria, Eleanor said, her voice filled with bitterness. She was jealous and resentful, and she used me to make herself feel better. Well, I'm glad you know the truth now, Mrs. Sterling, Maria said. And I appreciate you apologizing to me. It's not enough, Maria, Eleanor said. I ruined your reputation. I made you feel like a criminal in your own home. I need to do more than just apologize. Eleanor offered Maria a generous compensation package, including a significant bonus and a glowing letter of recommendation. Maria was hesitant to accept, but Eleanor insisted. You deserve this, Maria, she said. You deserve to be treated with respect and kindness. With Maria's name cleared and Beatrice out of her life, Eleanor had a decision to make. She could try to keep the story quiet, to protect her reputation and avoid further embarrassment. But that didn't feel right. Beatrice's actions had been so malicious, so calculated, that Eleanor felt a responsibility to expose her. She decided to leak the security footage to a popular online gossip blog, knowing that it would unleash a media storm. She wanted the world to know the truth about Beatrice, and she was prepared to face the consequences. The fear of public scrutiny was less daunting than the thought of letting Beatrice get away with her treachery. Eleanor pressed send, unleashing the video that would change everything. The internet exploded. Within hours, the security footage was everywhere. "Socialite steals from best friend," screamed the headlines. "Diamond necklace heist, friendship ends in betrayal." The video was shared and reshared, commented on and dissected. People couldn't believe what they were seeing. Beatrice, once admired for her charm and style, was now the object of ridicule and scorn. Her social media accounts were flooded with angry messages. Her friends distanced themselves from her. Invitations to parties and events dried up. Her life, once filled with glamour and privilege, began to crumble around her. Eleanor, too, faced scrutiny. Some people praised her for exposing Beatrice's treachery. Others criticized her for airing her dirty laundry in public. But Eleanor stood her ground. She refused to be ashamed of what she had done. She had been the victim of a crime, and she had every right to seek justice. The story quickly caught the attention of the mainstream media. News channels and newspapers ran stories about the stolen necklace and the broken friendship. Pundits debated the ethics of Eleanor's decision to release the security footage. Psychologists analyzed Beatrice's motives, labeling her actions as a classic case of envy and resentment. Both Eleanor and Beatrice were inundated with requests for interviews. Eleanor initially declined, wanting to avoid further sensationalizing the story. But she eventually agreed to appear on a popular daytime talk show, hoping to set the record straight and share her side of the story. She wanted to explain why she had suspected Maria, why she had installed the cameras, and why she had ultimately decided to expose Beatrice. She wanted people to understand the pain and humiliation she had endured. Beatrice, desperate to salvage her reputation, also agreed to appear on the talk show. She hoped to offer an explanation for her actions, to apologize to Eleanor, and to somehow repair the damage she had caused. She knew it was a long shot, but she felt she had nothing to lose. The stage was set for a dramatic confrontation, one that would be watched by millions of viewers around the world. The once inseparable friends were now adversaries, their lives forever changed by a single act of betrayal. The world waited with bated breath to see what would happen when they came face to face on live television. The atmosphere backstage at the talk show was thick with tension. Eleanor sat in her dressing room, trying to remain calm. She had rehearsed her talking points, but she knew that nothing could truly prepare her for facing Beatrice on live television. She felt a strange mix of anger, sadness, and anxiety. She wanted to tell her story, but she also dreaded the confrontation. Across the hall, in her own dressing room, Beatrice was a nervous wreck. She paced back and forth, her hands trembling. She had barely slept in days, haunted by the video and the public backlash. She knew that this was her last chance to salvage her reputation, but she also feared that she would only make things worse. She had prepared a heartfelt apology, but she wasn't sure if Eleanor would even accept it. As the show's start time approached, a producer knocked on Eleanor's door. "5 minutes, Mrs. Sterling," she said. "Are you ready?" Eleanor took a deep breath and nodded. "Yes," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm ready." She walked onto the stage, greeted by the warm applause of the studio audience. The talk show host, a seasoned professional, welcomed her with a sympathetic smile. "Eleanor, thank you for being here," she said. "This has been a difficult time for you, and we appreciate you sharing your story with us." Eleanor nodded, her eyes scanning the audience. She saw faces filled with curiosity, sympathy, and judgment. She took a seat on the plush sofa, feeling a knot tighten in her stomach. The host began by recapping the events that had led to the interview: the missing necklace, the suspicion of Maria, the installation of the security cameras, and the shocking discovery of Beatrice's theft. The audience gasped as the security footage was played on a large screen behind them. "Eleanor," the host said, turning to her, "what was your reaction when you saw that video?" Eleanor paused, gathering her thoughts. "I was devastated," she said, her voice trembling slightly. I couldn't believe that someone I had considered my best friend could betray me in such a cruel way. The host nodded sympathetically. And what about Maria, your housekeeper? How did she react to all of this? Maria was incredibly gracious and forgiving, Eleanor said. She didn't deserve to be accused, and I'm so grateful that the truth came out. She sincerely hoped that this appearance would help to further clear Maria's name. The host then turned to the audience, setting the stage for the next segment of the show. And now, she announced, please welcome Beatrice. Beatrice walked onto the stage, her face pale and drawn. She was met with a mixture of boos and polite applause from the audience. She avoided eye contact with Eleanor, taking a seat on the sofa opposite her. The talk show host turned to Beatrice, her expression serious. Beatrice, thank you for being here, she said. We know this is a difficult situation, but we appreciate you being willing to share your side of the story. Beatrice nodded, her voice trembling. Thank you for having me, she said softly. I know I've made a terrible mistake, and I'm here to take responsibility for my actions. The host leaned forward. Beatrice, can you explain to our viewers why you stole Eleanor's necklace? Beatrice took a deep breath. It's hard to explain, she said, her eyes filling with tears. I was jealous of Eleanor. She has everything, the money, the success, the beautiful house. I felt like I was always living in her shadow. So you stole her necklace to make yourself feel better, the host asked, her voice incredulous. It was wrong, I know, Beatrice said, her voice cracking. I wasn't thinking straight. I just wanted to feel like I had something she wanted. But why didn't you just ask Eleanor if you could borrow the necklace, the host pressed. I was afraid she would say no, Beatrice admitted. She's always been so protective of that necklace. It was foolish and wrong. I know that now. The host turned to Eleanor. Eleanor, what do you think of Beatrice's explanation? Eleanor looked at Beatrice, her expression a mixture of sadness and anger. I'm disappointed, Beatrice, she said, her voice firm but controlled. I thought we were friends. I thought we trusted each other. I can't believe you would do something like this to me. I'm so sorry, Eleanor, Beatrice sobbed. I know I've hurt you, and I'll never forgive myself. I hope that someday, you can find it in your heart to forgive me. Eleanor shook her head. I don't know if I can ever forgive you, Beatrice, she said. You betrayed me in the worst possible way. You not only stole my necklace, but you also let me accuse an innocent woman. That's something I can't easily forget. The air hung thick with unspoken words, regret, and the weight of a broken friendship. The host knew she had a ratings bonanza on her hands, but even she couldn't deny the palpable pain radiating from both women. The confrontation was about to escalate. You know, Beatrice continued, her voice rising slightly, it's easy for you to say that, Eleanor. You've never had to worry about money or success. You were born with a silver spoon in your mouth. Eleanor's eyes flashed with anger. That's not fair, Beatrice, she retorted. I've worked hard for everything I have. And I've always tried to share my good fortune with you. Share. Beatrice scoffed. You patronized me, Eleanor. You always made me feel like I was your charity case. That's not true. Eleanor exclaimed. I loved you, Beatrice. I thought we were friends. Friends don't steal from each other. Beatrice shot back. And friends don't accuse innocent people of crimes they didn't commit. Eleanor retorted, her voice shaking with emotion. The talk show host tried to intervene, but the two women were too caught up in their argument to notice. The tension in the studio was palpable, the audience hanging on every word. You know, Beatrice, Eleanor said, her voice low and dangerous, what hurts the most is that you let me believe that Maria was the thief. You knew she was innocent, and you let me treat her like a criminal. I was going to tell you the truth, Beatrice said, her voice defensive. I just needed time. Time for what, Beatrice? Eleanor asked, her voice laced with sarcasm. Time to sell the necklace? Time to come up with a better excuse? No. Beatrice cried. Time to figure out how to tell you without ruining our friendship. Our friendship was already ruined the moment you stole my necklace, Eleanor said, her voice cold and hard. Oh, come on, Eleanor, Beatrice said, her voice rising in frustration. It's just a necklace. It's not the end of the world. It's not just a necklace, Beatrice, Eleanor said, her voice trembling with emotion. It's a symbol of my family, of my history, of everything that's important to me. And you took it away from me. The silence that followed was deafening. The audience watched in stunned silence as the two women glared at each other, their faces etched with anger and pain. The talk show host, sensing that the situation was about to explode, stepped in to try to defuse the tension. But it was too late. The dam had broken, and there was no stopping the flood of emotions that was about to be unleashed. The decades of friendship, the years of shared experiences, were all crumbling before their eyes, reduced to a bitter and acrimonious argument on live television. The world was watching, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. You know what, Eleanor? Beatrice suddenly exclaimed, her voice dripping with venom. I think you set me up. You knew I was jealous of you, and you used that to your advantage. You wanted to humiliate me on national television. Eleanor gasped, her eyes wide with disbelief. That's absurd, Beatrice, she cried. How dare you accuse me of such a thing? It's true. Beatrice insisted, her voice rising to a shriek. You always had to be the center of attention. You couldn't stand the thought of me having something you didn't. So you orchestrated this whole thing to make me look bad. That's a lie. Eleanor shouted, jumping to her feet. You're the liar, Beatrice. You're the thief. You stole my necklace, and now you're trying to blame me for your own actions. The talk show host, completely overwhelmed by the situation, tried desperately to regain control. Ladies, please, she pleaded. Let's try to remain calm and have a civil discussion. But her words were drowned out by the escalating argument. The audience gasped and murmured, captivated by the unfolding drama. You're nothing but a spoiled brat, Eleanor. Beatrice screamed. You've never had to work a day in your life. You have no idea what it's like to struggle. And you're nothing but a jealous, vindictive thief. Eleanor retorted. You're so consumed by envy that you're willing to destroy anyone who gets in your way. I hate you, Eleanor. Beatrice shrieked, her face contorted with rage. I hate you too, Beatrice. Eleanor screamed back. I never want to see you again. With that, Eleanor turned and stormed off the stage, leaving Beatrice sobbing uncontrollably on the sofa. The talk show host, stunned and speechless, could only stare after her. The show had descended into chaos, a spectacle of broken friendship and raw emotion. The viewers at home were glued to their screens, unable to look away from the train wreck that was unfolding before them. The once inseparable friends had become bitter enemies, their relationship destroyed beyond repair. And it had all played out on live television, for the world to see. The cameras continued to roll, capturing every tear, every shout, every moment of heartbreak and betrayal. The end of an era had come, not with a whimper, but with a bang. The talk show host, recovering from the shock of Eleanor's departure, turned to Beatrice, who was still sobbing on the sofa. The cameras zoomed in on her tear-streaked face, capturing her despair for the millions of viewers watching at home. Beatrice, the host said gently, I know this is difficult, but can you tell us what you're feeling right now? Beatrice looked up, her eyes red and swollen. I'm devastated, she sobbed. I've lost my best friend. I've ruined my reputation. I don't know what I'm going to do. Do you have anything you want to say to Eleanor? The host asked. Beatrice nodded. Eleanor, she said, her voice choked with tears, I'm so sorry. I know I've hurt you deeply, and I'll never forgive myself. I hope that someday, you can find it in your heart to forgive me. The host sighed. Well, Beatrice, she said, I think it's clear that this friendship is over. Is there anything else you want to say before we wrap things up? Beatrice shook her head, unable to speak. The host turned to the camera, her expression somber. Well, folks, she said, you've just witnessed a very painful and public end to a long-time friendship. It's a reminder that even the closest relationships can be destroyed by jealousy, betrayal, and greed. We hope that Eleanor and Beatrice can find a way to heal from this experience, but it's clear that their friendship is irrevocably broken. The show cut to a commercial break, leaving Beatrice alone on the stage, surrounded by the remnants of her shattered life. The cameras continued to roll, capturing her raw emotion for the world to see. Backstage, Eleanor was surrounded by producers and publicists, all trying to assess the damage. She ignored them, her mind racing. She had said what she needed to say, but she still felt empty and hollow. She had lost her best friend, and she knew that she would never get her back. As she walked out of the studio, she was mobbed by reporters, all clamoring for a statement. She pushed her way through the crowd, refusing to answer their questions. She just wanted to go home and be alone. The world continued to buzz about the talk show appearance, dissecting every word and every gesture. But for Eleanor and Beatrice, the drama was over. Their lives had been forever changed, and they would both have to find a way to move on, alone. The finality of it all hung heavy in the air, a stark reminder of the fragility of human relationships and the destructive power of betrayal. The chapter was closed, the book was finished, and there would be no sequel. In the days and weeks that followed, Eleanor did her best to rebuild her life. She focused on her work, her family, and her remaining friends. She made a conscious effort to be more trusting and less judgmental, learning from the mistakes she had made. One of the first things she did was to reach out to Maria again. She knew that a compensation package wasn't enough to erase the pain and humiliation she had caused, but she wanted to make amends in any way she could. Eleanor arranged a press conference, where she publicly apologized to Maria for wrongly accusing her of theft. She praised Maria's honesty, integrity, and hard work, and she expressed her deep regret for the way she had treated her. Maria is a wonderful woman, Eleanor said, her voice filled with emotion, and she deserves all the respect and kindness in the world. I was wrong to suspect her, and I am truly sorry for the pain I caused her. Maria, standing beside Eleanor, accepted the apology with grace and forgiveness. She thanked Eleanor for her generosity and expressed her hope that they could move forward. The press conference helped to clear Maria's name and restore her reputation. She was offered several new job opportunities, and she eventually found a position with a kind and appreciative family. Eleanor, too, began to heal. She realized that her wealth and privilege didn't make her immune to betrayal and heartbreak. She learned the importance of trusting her instincts and of not judging people based on appearances or rumors. She also learned the value of true friendship, and she vowed to cherish the relationships she still had. She started volunteering at a local charity, helping people who were less fortunate than herself. She found that giving back to the community helped her to feel more grounded and connected. Eleanor never forgot about Beatrice, but she also knew that their friendship was over. She hoped that Beatrice would eventually find a way to turn her life around, but she also knew that she couldn't be a part of it. The experience had taught her a valuable lesson about the dangers of envy and resentment, and she was determined not to let those emotions consume her own life. The scars of betrayal would always be there, but she was determined to move forward, to learn from her mistakes, and to build a better future for herself. The necklace was eventually recovered, but it never held the same meaning for Eleanor. It served as a reminder of the high cost of mistrust and the importance of choosing friends wisely. Beatrice's life, on the other hand, took a sharp turn for the worse. Shunned by her former friends and ostracized from society, she found herself alone and isolated. The invitations stopped coming, the phone calls ceased, and the social gatherings she once enjoyed became distant memories. Financial hardship soon followed. Her reputation ruined, she was unable to find employment. The lavish lifestyle she had once taken for granted became a distant dream. She was forced to sell her apartment and move into a small, run-down apartment in a less desirable part of town. The guilt and shame weighed heavily on her. She replayed the events in her mind, wondering how she could have been so foolish, so selfish. She longed to apologize to Eleanor, but she knew that it was too late. She had destroyed their friendship beyond repair. She tried to reach out to her family, but they were ashamed of her actions and unwilling to offer her support. She was alone in the world, with no one to turn to. Beatrice's story serves as a cautionary tale about the destructive power of envy and the importance of honesty and integrity. Her desire for what Eleanor had led her down a path of deceit and betrayal, ultimately destroying her own life in the process. The stolen necklace, once a symbol of her envy, became a symbol of her downfall. It represented everything she had lost: her friendship, her reputation, her financial security, and her sense of self-worth. In the end, Beatrice learned a harsh lesson about the consequences of her actions. She discovered that true happiness cannot be found in material possessions or social status, but rather in genuine relationships and a clear conscience. The story of Eleanor and Beatrice is a reminder that envy and resentment can be toxic emotions, capable of destroying even the strongest bonds. It highlights the importance of being content with what you have and of valuing honesty and integrity above all else. It shows that true friendship is a precious gift, one that should be cherished and protected, not sacrificed on the altar of jealousy and greed. And it serves as a warning that the choices we make can have far-reaching consequences, impacting not only our own lives but also the lives of those around us. The pursuit of happiness should never come at the expense of another's well-being. Honesty, trust, and genuine connection are the cornerstones of a fulfilling life.